Hey, dear viewers. This is my dear diary. We're always looking to share more interesting stories. If you like our video, please subscribe to our channel. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions are my biggest motivation. More exciting and interesting novels updated every day. Thank you. The Bloodline and Bonds. Y/N never imagined her ordinary life could change so drastically. One fateful evening, while wandering through an unfamiliar forest, she encountered 7 enigmatic strangers, their presence both magnetic and unsettling. It didn't take long for her to uncover their secret. They were vampires, each with a mysterious past and powers beyond imagination. The 7, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, RM, Jimin, V, and Jungkook, felt an inexplicable connection to Y/N, as though fate had intertwined their destinies. While they welcomed her into their tightly knit family, strange and unexplainable things began happening to Y/N. Her dreams became vivid flashes of a forgotten world, and she started exhibiting abilities that even the vampires couldn't fully understand. As the bond between Y/N and the 7 deepened, questions arose. Who was she? Why did her powers feel so tied to their existence? Together, they embarked on a journey to uncover Y/N's true identity, discovering ancient secrets that could change everything they thought they knew. The Eclipse Guardian. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting an eerie silver glow over the quiet town. Y/N wandered through the cobblestone streets, her curiosity as boundless as her energy. She wasn't supposed to be out this late, she knew that, but the thrill of exploring on her own outweighed her aunt's warnings about staying indoors after dark. She clutched a worn leather notebook in her hand, scribbling doodles and random thoughts as she strolled. The world was her canvas, and she had a knack for finding beauty in the most mundane places. Tonight, it was the old alleyway behind the bakery that had caught her eye. As she turned the corner, the temperature dropped suddenly, sending a shiver down her spine. The alley, bathed in shadows, seemed unnaturally quiet. Y/N paused, tilting her head like a curious bird. Strange, she whispered to herself, stepping cautiously forward. Her footsteps echoed, and she began to hum softly to dispel the eerie silence. But just as she reached the alley's end, a flicker of movement caught her eye. 7 figures emerged from the darkness, their silhouettes sharp and otherworldly. Who's there? Y/N called, her voice trembling slightly. The tallest of the figures stepped forward, his face illuminated by the faint glow of a street lamp. He had sharp features and intelligent eyes that seemed to pierce right through her. We could ask you the same thing, the man said, his voice calm but laced with authority. Y/N blinked, her curiosity overtaking her fear. You guys are really pale. Do you not get enough sun? The group froze, exchanging incredulous looks. One of them, a handsome young man with a mischievous smile, chuckled. She's either very brave or very clueless. Both, probably, another muttered, his deep voice dripping with sarcasm. Y/N crossed her arms, her pout making her look even younger than her age. Hey! I'm standing right here, you know. The one who had spoken first sighed. This isn't a safe place for someone like you. You should leave. But before she could respond, the air around them shifted. A dark, oppressive energy seeped into the alley, and Y/N instinctively stepped closer to the strangers. From the shadows emerged 3 more figures, their eyes glowing unnaturally. You found her, one of them hissed, their voice echoing unnaturally. The tallest of the group moved instantly, positioning himself in front of Y/N. The others followed suit, their movements fluid and coordinated. Stay behind us, one of them said softly, his voice low but reassuring. What's going on? Y/N whispered, her heart pounding. The man closest to her glanced over his shoulder, his dark eyes glowing faintly. You've got something they want. And we're not going to let them take it. The fight that followed was like something out of a dream or a nightmare. The 7 strangers moved with supernatural speed and strength, deflecting the attacks of their enemies with ease. Sparks flew, shadows twisted, and Y/N could only watch, frozen in awe and terror. When the last of the attackers vanished into the night, the group turned to Y/N. What are you? She stammered, clutching her notebook like a lifeline. The mischievous one grinned, his fangs glinting in the moonlight. We're vampires. And apparently, you're special. Y/N blinked, then burst out laughing. Vampires? You've got to be kidding me. She thinks we're joking, another muttered, shaking his head. She'll figure it out soon enough, the leader said, his tone serious. He crouched slightly, meeting Y/N's wide-eyed gaze. Your blood, it's not ordinary. It holds power that can either save or destroy everything. We're here to make sure it's the former. Y/N tilted her head, her lips curving into a small, curious smile. So, you're saying I'm like a superhero? The quietest one, who had been leaning against the wall, let out a soft laugh. Sure, let's go with that. Y/N sat perched on a weathered stone bench in the middle of a sprawling forest clearing. The moonlight filtered through the branches, illuminating the faces of the 7 vampires standing around her. Despite the surreal events of the night, she wasn't scared anymore, just confused. So, let me get this straight, Y/N began, clutching her notebook to her chest. You guys are vampires, I have some special blood, and now you want me to live with you in some spooky mansion? Namjoon, the tallest and most composed of the group, adjusted his coat and nodded. It's for your safety. Others know about your uniqueness. Staying with us is the only way to ensure they don't get to you. Y/N raised an eyebrow. And why should I trust you? You just threw down in an alley like some supernatural action movie. What if you're just as dangerous? Seekjin stepped forward, placing a hand dramatically over his heart. Dangerous? Me? I'm the picture of charm and grace. I'm also an excellent cook. You'll be treated like royalty. Y/N's lips twitched into a grin despite herself. Vampires eat food? Well, no. But I still make it. Jean declared proudly. Jungkook rolled his eyes. Hyung, that's not really helping our case. Then what is? Y/N challenged, crossing her arms. Jimin knelt down to her level, his eyes sparkling with mischief. We saved your life, didn't we? Consider it a thank you gift. Plus, we're great company. I bet you'll love hanging out with me the most. Taeyong immediately leaned over, his deep voice laced with curiosity. Actually, I think she'll find me the most interesting. I could show her the secret passageways in the manor. It'll be fun. Passageways? Y/N's eyes lit up with excitement. Like, hidden doors and stuff? Exactly. Taeyong said, grinning. Namjoon sighed, rubbing his temples. Can we focus, please? He turned to Y/N, his tone softening. You don't have to decide right now. But I promise, if you come with us, we'll protect you. You won't have to face this alone. Y/N hesitated, glancing around at the group. They were strange, sure, but something about them felt safe. Okay, she said finally. But if I come with you, I want answers. And snacks. Lots of snacks. The Eclipse Manor. The vampires led Y/N through the dense forest, their movements eerily quiet. As they reached the edge of a cliff, Y/N's jaw dropped. Below them stood a grand, Gothic mansion, its towering spires piercing the night sky. Lanterns flickered along the winding path to the entrance, and a gentle mist curled around the base of the structure. It was like something out of a fairy tale, or a horror movie. This is your house? Y/N whispered. It's more of a sanctuary, Yoongi said, his voice low and calming. We call it the Eclipse Manor. Because it's as creepy as an eclipse? Y/N joked, earning a chuckle from Hoseok. Actually, Namjoon explained, it's because this place only reveals its true nature during an eclipse. The rest of the time, it looks like ruins to anyone outside. That's insanely cool, Y/N admitted, following them down the path. Inside the manor. The doors creaked open to reveal an interior that was both luxurious and haunting. Chandeliers cast a soft glow over dark wood floors, and intricate tapestries lined the walls. A grand staircase spiraled upward, leading to countless rooms. "Welcome home," Jean declared, spreading his arms dramatically. Y/N turned to him. "So, who actually owns this place?" "It's been in the clan for centuries," Namjin explained. "We're caretakers of sorts, ensuring its secrets stay protected." As they moved through the manor, the vampires began to introduce themselves in their own unique ways. Namjin led her to the library, a sprawling room filled with ancient tomes and artifacts. "This is where I spend most of my time. If you have questions about our history, or anything, really, this is the place to start." Jean took her to the kitchen, which was surprisingly modern. "I may not need food, but I enjoy cooking. And if you don't like what I make, you're on your own." Yoongi showed her a quiet music room, tucked away near the back of the manor. "I compose here when I need peace. You're welcome to sit in as long as you don't touch anything." Hoseok guided her to a sunlit conservatory filled with flowers. "It's a bit out of place for a vampire's home, but I like it. Makes the place feel alive, you know?" Jimin grinned as he led her to a training room. "This is where I practice combat. If you want to learn self-defense, I can teach you." Taeyong disappeared for a moment before reappearing from behind a hidden door. "I told you about the passageways, right? This one leads to the garden. I'll show you all of them, eventually." Jungkook brought her to a high balcony overlooking the forest. "It's the best view in the house. You can see the whole valley from here." As the night wore on, Y/N found herself warming to the idea of staying with the group. Their quirky personalities, genuine care, and the undeniable sense of safety they provided made it hard to refuse. "Okay," she said finally, setting her mug down. "I'll stay. But only because this house is awesome and Jean promised to cook for me." The group exchanged amused smiles, and Jean puffed up with pride. "Welcome to Eclipse Manor," Namjin said with a smile. "And good luck surviving us," Yoongi added dryly, earning a laugh from Y/N. Chapter 2, A Family Like No Other. The morning sunlight filtered through the large, Gothic windows of the Eclipse Manor, casting soft beams onto the polished floors. Y/N woke up in the biggest, comfiest bed she had ever seen. She stretched, taking in the luxurious room around her, antique furniture, a chandelier that glittered like it belonged in a castle, and thick velvet curtains. It felt like waking up in a dream or a historical drama. She smiled to herself, remembering the chaos of the previous night. 7 vampires, each more eccentric than the last, had claimed her as part of their family. And now here she was, living in a mansion straight out of a fairy tale. Her stomach growled, pulling her out of her thoughts. "All right, time to face the weirdos," she mumbled, hopping out of bed. As Y/N entered the dining hall, she was greeted by the sight of a long table overflowing with food, stacks of pancakes, golden waffles, fresh fruit, and even a tower of pastries. At the head of the table stood Jean, looking exceptionally proud of himself. "Good morning," he announced with a flourish. "Behold, a breakfast fit for a queen." Y/N blinked, confused. "I thought vampires didn't eat food." "We don't," Jean said, his chest puffed out. "But I wanted to make your first morning special. Everything here is for you." Before Y/N could respond, Jungkook plopped into the seat beside her, grinning. "Hyung woke us all up at dawn to help. He made me cut fruit for 2 hours. I had to fold napkins," Yoongi grumbled, sipping a mug of what looked suspiciously like blood. "And I made the pancake batter," Hoseok added, beaming. "Even though Jean said I was too cheerful for kitchen work." "You were singing," Jean accused, pointing a spatula at him. "In my kitchen?" Y/N burst out laughing, clutching her stomach. "You guys are ridiculous." Jimin leaned closer to her, his trademark smirk in place. "See? This is just a taste of what it's like living with us." you're going to love it. Or lose your mind, Yoongi muttered under his breath. A room fit for a treasure. After breakfast, the group led Y/N to her new room, which they had spent the entire night preparing. Close your eyes, Taeyong instructed, standing dramatically in front of the door. Why? Y/N asked, squinting at him. Because it's a surprise, he insisted, waving his hands for emphasis. All right, she said, covering her eyes. But if this is a prank? It's not. Jungkook interrupted quickly, though the glint in his eyes made her suspicious. When Taeyong finally opened the door and guided her inside, Y/N gasped. The room was a masterpiece of comfort and whimsy. The walls were painted a soft lavender, her favorite color. How they knew this, she had no idea, and fairy lights draped across the ceiling like stars. A cozy reading nook sat by the window, complete with a mountain of pillows. This is, Y/N trailed off, blinking back tears. This is amazing. Jimin grinned. We wanted it to feel like you. Cute and a little chaotic. Hey, she protested, though she was smiling. We all added something, Namjoon explained, gesturing to the room. The lavender walls were Jin's idea. The lights were Taeyong's. The bookshelf in the corner is from me. I picked the pillows, Hoseok said proudly. And I hung the paintings, Jungkook added, pointing to the abstract artwork on the walls. Yoongi? Y/N asked, turning to the quiet vampire. Yoongi shrugged, looking unbothered. I fixed the creaky floorboard by the bed. That's actually really thoughtful, Y/N said sincerely. Yeah, Yoongi muttered, looking away. The closet fiasco. After settling in, Y/N was dragged into a debate about her wardrobe. Namjoon had suggested they stock her closet with practical clothes, but Jimin and Jin had other ideas. She needs dresses, Jimin declared, holding up a flowing gown. She'd look adorable in this. Adorable isn't the goal, Namjoon countered. She needs clothes she can move in. What if there's an emergency? I agree, Yoongi said from the corner. Give her something simple. She's not a doll. But she could be. Jin argued, draping a tiara over Y/N's head. Look at her. She's our little princess now. Y/N laughed, tugging the tiara off. Guys, I can pick my own clothes, you know. Can you, though? Jungkook teased. Because that hoodie you wore last night had a coffee stain. Excuse me, Y/N said, putting her hands on her hips, that was vintage. Vintage or tragic? Taeyong quipped, earning laughter from the group. Alright, that's it. Y/N grabbed a pillow from her bed and threw it at Taeyong, who caught it effortlessly. You're all going to regret messing with me. That evening, the group gathered in the main hall for what Jin called a proper welcome. Candles flickered along the walls, and soft music played in the background. Jin raised a glass filled with what Y/N hoped was red wine. To Y/N, the newest member of our family. To Y/N, the others echoed, lifting their glasses. Y/N looked around at their smiling faces and felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in a long time. You guys are weird. But I like it. Welcome to the family, Namjoon said with a small smile. We're glad you're here. And don't worry, Hoseok added, winking. We'll protect you no matter what. Even from yourself, Yoongi teased, earning a playful glare from Y/N. As laughter filled the room, Y/N realized she had found something she didn't even know she was missing, a home. Chapter 3, A Story of the Past. The day had been peaceful, and for the first time since she'd arrived at Eclipse Manor, Y/N felt completely at ease. The chaos of getting settled in had settled into a comfortable routine. The vampires went about their activities, teasing each other, making her laugh, and allowing her to feel like a part of something larger than herself. It was late afternoon when they all gathered in the lounge area, one of the large, cozy rooms with deep, plush couches and a roaring fire in the hearth. Y/N sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping on a cup of tea that Jin had graciously made for her, though she suspected it was more out of a desire to impress than genuine thirst. Okay, Y/N, Hosiak said, tossing a cushion toward her. We've shared a lot about ourselves already. Now it's your turn. He gave her a mischievous smile. Tell us about the mysterious past of our little treasure. Y/N rolled her eyes, though a faint smile tugged at her lips. Mysterious? Hardly. She glanced around at the eager faces of the vampires. Namjoon, always the leader, had his arms crossed thoughtfully, while the others were lounging in a circle, their eyes twinkling with curiosity. Y/N sighed and set her cup down on the table. Alright, I'll tell you, but only because I have no choice, she said dramatically, earning a round of laughter from the group. Tell us. We're dying to know. Jimin cheered, throwing his hands in the air. I was raised in an orphanage, Y/N began, her voice quieter now, her eyes focusing on the fire. I don't really remember much about my parents, but I think I was pretty young when they left, or when they were taken from me. She shrugged nonchalantly, but a shadow passed over her face. I guess I never really understood why. The room grew quieter, the teasing atmosphere shifting slightly as they all leaned in a little closer, sensing the change in Y/N's tone. Where was this orphanage? Namjoon asked gently, breaking the silence. His voice was soft, as though he was carefully navigating the conversation. An old place, out in the countryside, Y/N replied. It was big and run down, with a garden that always smelled like dust and old roses. There were always more kids than there was food, but it didn't matter much. We made our own fun. She paused, her lips curling into a mischievous grin. I was a little devil when I was younger. Always getting into trouble. How much trouble? Jean asked, leaning forward, a smirk tugging at his lips. Y/N leaned back, thinking for a moment, then laughed. I once convinced the whole orphanage that there was a ghost living in the attic. We all stayed up late one night to catch it, and when they went up to check, I'd borrowed all the candy from the kitchen and scattered it all over the attic floor. The adults found the candy and thought it was some kind of curse or something. I never saw them go up there again. The group burst into laughter at the memory, and even Yoongi cracked a smile, though he quickly hid it behind his hand. Were you always this sneaky? Jimin asked, winking. I think I'd like to recruit you for a few projects around here. I wasn't always sneaky, Y/N said with a cheeky grin. I could also be pretty sweet, too. I'd sneak into the kitchen and make my own snacks when the adults weren't looking. And when no one was around, I'd make sure the younger kids had something to eat, even if we were running low on supplies. That's really sweet of you, Hosiak said softly, his eyes warm with admiration. You were always looking out for the others. Y/N looked up at him, her eyes flashing with something playful. I had to be, she said, her voice teasing. I was the oldest one there. I was like the unofficial big sister to everyone. Besides, someone had to keep those younger kids out of trouble. Who else was going to put up with them? That's what the little devil in you did, Yoongi murmured, giving her a small smile. Y/N chuckled, but then her expression softened. I never liked being in the orphanage, though. Not really. It always felt empty. Like there was something missing, you know? I get it, Taeyong said thoughtfully. It's like you were always looking for something, but you didn't know what. Exactly, Y/N agreed, her voice almost a whisper. I spent most of my childhood dreaming about leaving, but I never had anywhere to go. The orphanage was my whole world until it wasn't. Jean, who had been listening intently, suddenly chuckled, his voice light as he nudged her, playfully. Well, it looks like we're the lucky ones now. I'm pretty sure you're the most entertaining little devil I've ever met. Y/N rolled her eyes, but her smile didn't fade. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not exactly an angel. And we're glad you're not, Namjoon said with a quiet chuckle. We need someone who'll keep us on our toes. I think we've all learned that Y/N has a knack for causing chaos, Yoongi added, his eyes glinting with humor. But I think she'll fit in just fine around here. Hey! Y/N exclaimed, pretending to be offended. I can be responsible when I need to be. Oh, really? Jimin raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms. Tell us more, because I'm not sure we've seen the responsible side of you yet. Y/N pouted dramatically. You guys are so mean. I swear, I'll show you all how responsible I am when the time comes. Sure, Taeyong said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. But we'll be watching. We won't let you get away with too much. I'll hold you to that, Y/N said with a wink, her usual cheekiness returning. But just remember, I'm not the only troublemaker in this room. You all have your moments. The group laughed at her words, but there was an unspoken understanding that formed between them. Despite her past, Y/N was becoming a part of their family, her little quirks, her mischievous nature, and even her sweetness made her uniquely fit into their chaotic world. Chapter 4, A Night in the Forest. The crescent moon hung low in the sky, its silvery glow illuminating the sprawling forest that surrounded Eclipse Manor. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth. Y/N, bundled in a warm hoodie and boots, trailed behind the 7 vampires as they made their way through the woods. Okay, explain this to me one more time, Y/N said, struggling to keep up. Why are we really out here? Because I'm starting to feel like I'm being dragged into some kind of cult initiation. It's not an initiation, Namjoon said, glancing back at her with a smirk. We just want to see how well you can handle yourself. It's important for us to know your limits. Limits? Y/N repeated, raising an eyebrow. What kind of limits? Like, how fast I can run? How many trees I can climb? Or how loudly you scream if you get scared, Taeyong teased, his deep voice carrying a hint of mischief. Y/N glared at him. I don't scream. I might yelp. Occasionally. But only if it's warranted. Sure, Jungkook said, his grin wide as he jogged ahead, effortlessly leaping over a fallen tree. We'll see how tough you really are. Stop teasing her, Jean said, waving a hand dismissively. She's our treasure. We can't traumatize her on her first hunting trip. Hunting? Y/N stopped in her tracks. I thought we were just going for a walk. Hoseok laughed, his bright smile lighting up the night. It's a special kind of walk. Don't worry, you're not hunting anything. You're just observing. For now, Yoongi added under his breath, earning a glare from Jean. The deeper they ventured into the forest, the more alive it seemed. The sounds of nocturnal creatures filled the air, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a wolf. The vampires moved gracefully through the terrain, their steps almost silent. Y/N, on the other hand, tripped over a root and stumbled into a bush. This forest is out to get me, she muttered, brushing leaves off her hoodie. Or you're just clumsy, Jimin teased, offering her a hand. I'm not clumsy, Y/N said, taking his hand begrudgingly. The ground is just uneven. Jimin smirked. Sure, blame the ground. Namjoon cleared his throat, interrupting their banter. Alright, this spot should work, he said, gesturing to a clearing bathed in moonlight. What exactly are we doing here? Y/N asked, looking around suspiciously. We're testing your physical abilities, Namjoon explained. Think of it as training. If you're going to be part of our family, it's important for you to know how to handle yourself. I can handle myself just fine, Y/N said, crossing her arms. Prove it, Taeyong challenged, his eyes glinting. Alright, Namjoon said, stepping forward. Let's start simple. Y/N, show us how fast you can run. Run? From what? Y/N asked, narrowing her eyes. Jungkook grinned. From me. Before she could protest, Jungkook darted toward her, his movements so quick they were almost a blur. Y/N yelped and took off running, her heart pounding as she weaved through the trees. Come on, Y/N. You can do better than that. Jungkook called out, his voice annoyingly close. You're not even trying. Taeyong added, laughing from somewhere nearby. Why are you all so fast? Y/N shouted, panting as she dodged another route. Vampires, remember? Yoongi said dryly, suddenly appearing beside her. Y/N let out a startled squeak and stumbled, but Yoongi caught her arm before she hit the ground. Relax, he said, smirking. We're not trying to kill you. Yet. That's not funny, Y/N grumbled, pushing herself upright. Yoongi chuckled and stepped back, letting her catch her breath. After the running test, the group moved on to strength and strategy. Jin set up a mock challenge, using large branches to create an obstacle course. Alright, Y/N, he said, standing proudly with his hands on his hips. Show us what you've got. If you can make it through this course without falling, I'll personally make you pancakes for a week. Y/N eyed the course skeptically. This looks like something out of a survival movie. Are you sure this is safe? Of course it is, Jin said confidently. I designed it myself. That's not comforting, Y/N muttered, but she stepped forward anyway. As she clambered over branches and ducked under logs, the vampires watched with varying levels of amusement. She's not bad, Hoseok said, clapping lightly when Y/N managed to leap over a particularly high obstacle. She's stubborn, Yoongi corrected, though there was a hint of admiration in his tone. Y/N grinned as she reached the end of the course, her clothes covered in dirt and leaves. See? I can handle myself. You still tripped twice, Jimin pointed out, smirking. I'd like to see you do better. Y/N shot back, sticking her tongue out at him. Careful, Taeyong said, his deep voice teasing. Challenge him, and he just might show you. By the end of the night, Y/N was exhausted but exhilarated. They sat around a makeshift fire, the vampires teasing her mercilessly about her stumbles and yelps. You did well, Namjoon said, his tone genuine. For a human, you're tougher than we expected. High praise from the leader, Y/N said, pretending to bow. Don't let it go to your head, Yoongi muttered, though the corner of his mouth twitched into a smile. Thanks, guys, Y/N said, her voice soft. I've never done anything like this before. It was fun. Get used to it, Jungkook said, his grin wide. This is just the beginning. As the fire crackled and the group laughed, Y/N felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the flames. She wasn't just a guest in their world anymore. She was part of it, part of their family. Chapter 5, A Treat, Dark Secrets, and New Beginnings. After the exhausting night in the forest, Y/N half expected the vampires to give her a break the next day. Instead, they were already bustling with excitement when she shuffled into the kitchen, still groggy and rubbing sleep from her eyes. Good morning, our treasure. Hoseok greeted her, his radiant smile too bright for the early hour. Morning, Y/N mumbled, slumping into a chair. Why are you all so chipper? Didn't you guys just pull an all-nighter? We don't exactly get tired like humans do, Yoongi said, sipping on his coffee. One of the perks of being us. Lucky you, Y/N muttered, yawning. Jin placed a plate of pancakes in front of her, his expression smug. Eat up. You earned it after your spectacular performance last night. Spectacular? Jimin snorted. She tripped over half the obstacles. Still better than you could do, Y/N shot back, sticking her tongue out. Alright, kids, Namjoon interrupted with a chuckle. Let her eat in peace. Today's about giving her a proper reward. Reward? Y/N perked up, looking at him curiously. You'll see, Taeyong said, a mysterious glint in his eyes. After breakfast, they led her outside, where the morning sun bathed the forest in golden light. What's this reward you're talking about? Y/N asked, her curiosity growing. First, you need to understand what we're capable of, Namjoon said, his tone serious. Last night was just for fun. Now, we'll show you why we're different. The playful banter faded, replaced by an intense, almost otherworldly energy. Y/N watched as the vampires spread out, each preparing to showcase their unique abilities. Jean stepped forward first. "I'm not just a pretty face, you know," he said with a wink. In a blur of motion, he scaled the nearest tree, leaping effortlessly between branches, before landing gracefully back on the ground. "Agility and speed," he said, dusting off his hands. "Not bad, right?" "That was insane," Y/N exclaimed, her jaw dropping. Jungkook grinned and followed suit, but instead of agility, he demonstrated raw strength. Gripping a large boulder, he lifted it as if it were made of paper and tossed it several meters away. "Strength like this comes in handy," he said casually, flexing his arms. "Show off," Yoongi muttered. "Speaking of Yoongi," Namjoon said, gesturing toward him, "you're up." Yoongi sighed and raised a hand. Within moments, shadows seemed to gather around him, forming a swirling mist. "I'm good with stealth," he said simply. "And shadows like me." He disappeared into the mist, only to reappear behind Y/N, startling her. "Don't do that," she yelped, clutching her chest. Hoseok was next, and his demonstration was a little less dramatic but equally impressive. With a flick of his wrist, he created a gust of wind so strong it bent the grass. "I can manipulate energy," he explained. "It's useful for disarming enemies, or annoying friends." Jimin stepped forward with his trademark smirk. "I don't need shadows or strength to charm people," he said, his voice dropping into a soft, almost hypnotic tone. Y/N felt her pulse quicken, as though his words alone were pulling her toward him. "Stop that," Taeyong said, stepping between them. "Don't mess with her like that." "I wasn't messing with her," Jimin said innocently, though the grin on his face said otherwise. Taeyong's demonstration was more subtle. He crouched down, placing his hand on the ground. Within moments, the earth beneath them trembled slightly, as if responding to his touch. "I can sense things," he explained. "Movement, life, energy. It's instinctual." Finally, Namjoon stepped forward, his presence commanding. "And I lead," he said simply. Though he didn't perform a flashy trick, the respect in the other's eyes spoke volumes. Y/N stood in awe, her mind racing as she tried to process everything she'd just seen. "You guys are incredible," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "Well, we are vampires," Jungkook said with a grin. "No," Y/N said, shaking her head. "It's more than that. You're all so unique. It's like you're princes of the night or something." "Princes?" Jean asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," Y/N said, her face lighting up with excitement. "Wait, I've got it." She pointed to each of them, naming them one by one. "Jean, the Prince of Grace, because you're ridiculously elegant, even when you're showing off. Jungkook, the Prince of Strength, obviously. You could crush a car with one hand. Yoongi, the Prince of Shadows, for obvious reasons. Also, you're kind of mysterious. Hoseok, the Prince of Energy, you literally bring light and life everywhere you go. Jimin, the Prince of Charm, because you nearly hypnotized me earlier. Taeyong, the Prince of Instinct, you're like, connected to everything. It's kind of spooky, but cool. Namjoon, the Prince of Wisdom, you're their leader, and you're probably the smartest one here." The group burst into laughter, though they seemed pleased with their new titles. "I like it," Jean said, nodding approvingly. "Of course you do," Yoongi muttered. "She called you graceful." After the excitement of their demonstrations, the group sat Y/N down to discuss the next steps. "We're going to train you," Namjoon said. "If you're going to live with us, you need to be able to defend yourself." "Wait, all of you are going to train me?" Y/N asked, her eyes wide. "Of course," Taeyong said, his deep voice calm. "Each of us will teach you something different. Jean will handle agility," Namjoon began, listing each of their roles. "Jungkook will teach strength. Yoongi will focus on stealth. Hoseok will work on energy and balance. Jimin, well, he'll teach you how to avoid being manipulated. And Taeyong will teach you survival skills. I'll oversee everything and make sure it's balanced. That's a lot, Y/N said, her head spinning. You'll be fine, Hoseok said reassuringly. We'll go at your pace. And if you get tired, Jean will make pancakes, Jimin added with a grin. Only if she earns them, Jean said, crossing his arms. Y/N laughed, her heart swelling with gratitude. All right, she said, smiling at them. Let's do it. I trust you guys. Chapter 6, First Training Day and Growing Tensions. The next morning, Y/N woke up to the sound of light knocking on her door. Rubbing her eyes, she groggily stumbled to open it. Standing outside, dressed in a casual yet annoyingly perfect black training outfit, was Taeyong. Good morning, he said, his deep voice laced with amusement. It's time to train. Already? Y/N groaned, leaning against the doorframe. The sun just came up. Taeyong tilted his head, his lips curling into a mischievous smirk. It's actually past noon. We thought we'd let you sleep in, but I guess you're still not ready for vampire life. Y/N stuck her tongue out at him, and Taeyong chuckled. Come on, sleepyhead. Don't keep the princes waiting. Downstairs, the rest of the group was already gathered in a clearing behind the manor, surrounded by towering trees. Jungkook stood in the center, stretching his arms and rolling his shoulders. You're starting with me today, he announced as Y/N approached. His grin was playful, but hinted at a competitive edge. I'm going to teach you how to build strength. Do I really need strength training? Y/N asked skeptically. It's not like I'm planning to lift boulders or anything. Hey, Jungkook said, flexing his arm, strength isn't just about lifting things. It's about control. Balance. Knowing your limits, and pushing them. Alright, Mr. Motivational Speech, Y/N said, smirking. What's first? Push-ups, Jungkook replied, dropping to the ground effortlessly. Y/N groaned but followed suit, attempting to mimic his form. However, after barely 10 push-ups, her arms began to shake. Not bad, Jungkook teased, watching her struggle. But you're going to need to do a lot more than that if you want to keep up with me. Why don't you try being human and then talk? Y/N shot back, collapsing onto the grass. Fair enough, Jungkook said, laughing as he extended a hand to help her up. His touch lingered just a second too long, and Y/N felt a faint blush creeping up her cheeks. Thanks, she muttered, avoiding his gaze. Next, it was Taeyong's turn. He led Y/N to a section of the forest where they had set up a simple obstacle course. Alright, Taeyong said, his voice calm and measured. The goal here is to move through the course as quickly and smoothly as possible. It's all about instinct and flow. Y/N eyed the course nervously. This looks challenging. You'll be fine, Taeyong said, his tone reassuring. Just trust your instincts. Y/N started the course, clambering over logs and ducking under branches. Despite her initial hesitation, she began to find a rhythm. You're doing great, Taeyong called out, his deep voice carrying a warmth that made Y/N smile. As she neared the end, she stumbled over a root, nearly falling. Taeyong was there in an instant, his hand steadying her. Careful, he said, his voice low. We wouldn't want you to get hurt. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away. Y/N quickly stepped back, her heart pounding. Thanks, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Taeyong's lips quirked into a small smile. Anytime. The final training session of the day was with Jimin, who waited for her with his usual playful grin. Welcome to my class, he said, bowing dramatically. Today, we're working on charm and balance. Charm? Y/N asked, raising an eyebrow. How is that useful in a fight? Jimin stepped closer, his smile softening. Charm isn't just about fighting. It's about influence. Getting someone to trust you, or hesitate just long enough for you to make your move. I'm not trying to hypnotize people, Y/N said, crossing her arms. Not yet, Jimin teased, winking at her. Now, follow me. He led her to a narrow log suspended over a shallow stream. Your job is to walk across this without falling, he explained. That's it? Y/N asked, stepping onto the log. As she started walking, Jimin added, oh, and I might throw a few things your way to keep it interesting. Before she could protest, Jimin tossed a small rock at her feet, causing her to wobble. Hey, she shouted, glaring at him. Focus, Jimin said, smirking. This is about balance, remember? Y/N gritted her teeth and continued forward, narrowly avoiding another rock. When she finally reached the other side, she turned to Jimin, triumphant. Not bad, Jimin said, clapping. But don't get too confident. That was the easiest challenge. Y/N rolled her eyes, but couldn't help smiling. During a water break, Jungkook leaned against a tree, watching Y/N with an amused expression. You're tougher than you look, he said, his tone teasing. Gee, thanks, Y/N replied, rolling her eyes. Don't let him get to you, Taeyong said, sitting beside her. He likes to act tough, but deep down, he's a softie. I am not, Jungkook protested, crossing his arms. Totally are, Y/N said, grinning. Jimin joined them, casually draping an arm around Y/N's shoulders. You know, he said, his voice smooth, if you ever get tired of training with these two, you can always stick with me. I'm way more fun. Oh, please, Taeyong said, rolling his eyes. Your idea of fun is making people walk across logs. Hey, she did great, Jimin shot back, winking at Y/N. Y/N felt her face heat up as the three of them continued to banter, their playful rivalry both amusing and confusing her. Chapter 7, Midnight Secrets with Taeyong. The manor always felt a little different at night. The shadows stretched longer, and the air carried an enigmatic stillness. After a long day of training, Y/N had collapsed into her chair at the dining table, feeling a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. Dinner had been lively, with Jin's cooking as the centerpiece and the usual playful bickering among the princes. But Y/N couldn't shake the nagging curiosity she felt about the manor. It was massive, with countless rooms and hallways she hadn't explored. That curiosity grew when, after dinner, Taeyong leaned toward her and whispered, "Meet me in the library after everyone goes to bed. Don't tell anyone." His deep voice and mischievous smile sent a shiver down her spine. Later that night, Y/N tiptoed through the dark hallways, careful not to make a sound. The moonlight streaming through the tall windows painted the corridors in silvery light, adding to the eerie yet magical atmosphere. When she reached the library, Taeyong was already there, lounging on one of the velvet armchairs as if he owned the place. You actually came, he said, his voice low and smooth. I thought you'd chicken out. As if, Y/N said, crossing her arms. What's this about? I thought you might like to see the real secrets of this place, Taeyong said, standing up. His eyes glinted with excitement. There's more to this manor than meets the eye. Y/N hesitated. Does Namjoon know about this? Namjoon doesn't need to know everything, Taeyong said with a playful smirk. Come on, treasure. Where's your sense of adventure? The nickname made her heart flutter, but she quickly shook it off. Fine. Lead the way. Taeyong guided her to the back of the library, where towering shelves lined the walls. He stopped in front of an old, dusty bookshelf, running his fingers along the spines of the books. Watch this, he said, pulling out a thick, leather-bound volume. With a low creak, the bookshelf slid aside, revealing a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. Y/N's jaw dropped. You have a secret passageway in your library? This is just one of many, Taeyong said, gesturing for her to follow him. You'll love this. The stairs spiraled downward, the air growing cooler as they descended. Taeyong lit a small lantern he had brought, the flickering light casting dancing shadows on the walls. Are you sure this is safe? Y/N asked, gripping the railing tightly. Safe is boring, Taeyong replied, his voice tinged with amusement. When they reached the bottom, they entered a hidden corridor filled with ancient carvings and faded murals. The walls told stories of battles, rituals, and what appeared to be vampires, though far more monstrous than the 7 she knew. This place is incredible, Y/N whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the details. It's part of our history, Taeyong said, his tone more serious now. This manor has been home to our kind for centuries. These passages were built for protection and escape. But now they're mostly forgotten. As they continued exploring, Taeyong's mischievous side resurfaced. At one point, he pretended to trip, nearly dropping the lantern. Y/N let out a startled squeak, grabbing his arm. Relax, Taeyong said, laughing. I was just messing with you. Not funny. Y/N said, her cheeks flushing. Admit it, you were worried about me, Taeyong teased, his voice dropping to a lower, more teasing tone. Worried you'd break the lantern and leave us in the dark, Y/N shot back, trying to sound confident despite the heat rising to her face. They reached a small alcove where a circular pool of water reflected the lantern's light. Taeyong crouched beside it, dipping his fingers into the water. This pool is said to show the past to those who look closely, he said, his voice almost a whisper. Y/N knelt beside him, leaning in to see. Suddenly, Taeyong flicked water at her, hitting her square in the face. Hey, she exclaimed, sitting back and glaring at him. Taeyong laughed, his deep voice echoing in the chamber. You should have seen your face. You're impossible, Y/N muttered, wiping her face. You like it, he said, his eyes locking with hers. For a moment, the playful atmosphere shifted. Y/N felt her heart race as Taeyong's gaze softened, his smirk fading into something more genuine. Why do you keep teasing me? She asked, her voice quieter now. Because you're fun to tease, Taeyong replied, his tone light again. But there was something in his eyes, a depth that made her breath catch. They spent hours wandering the passageways, discovering hidden rooms and long-forgotten artifacts. Taeyong's knowledge of the manor and its history impressed Y/N, and she couldn't help but feel drawn to his enigmatic personality. By the time they returned to the library, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky. You should get some rest, Taeyong said as they stood by the bookshelf. You're not coming? Y/N asked, feeling a pang of disappointment. I've got some things to think about, he said, his expression unreadable. Before she could respond, Taeyong leaned down, his face close to hers. Good night, treasure, he murmured, his voice sending a shiver down her spine. Then he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Y/N standing alone, her heart racing. After her late-night adventure with Taeyong, Y/N had barely crawled into bed before the first rays of sunlight began filtering through her window. She fell asleep instantly, her dreams filled with ancient murals and Taeyong's teasing smile. By the time she woke up, the sun was high in the sky, and she realized she was running late. Crap, she muttered, scrambling out of bed and pulling on her training clothes. She darted down the stairs, nearly tripping over her own feet, and skidded into the training yard where the others were waiting. Nice of you to join us, sleeping beauty, Yoongi drawled, lounging against a tree. Did you forget vampires don't sleep that much? Namjoon asked, adjusting his glasses and shaking his head in mock disapproval. I'm human, remember? Y/N shot back, slightly out of breath. And I was up late, reading. At that, Taeyong smirked but said nothing, while Jungkook snorted as if he didn't believe her. Alright, I'm first today, Jin declared, stepping forward with his trademark confidence. Time to teach you some proper reflexes. Y/N raised an eyebrow. Reflexes? Like dodging things? Exactly. Jin said, pulling out a basket of small fruits. What are those for? Y/N asked, eyeing the basket warily. Dodging practice, Jin said with a mischievous grin. Before she could protest, Jin started tossing fruits at her, at an alarming speed. Hey! Ow! Stop. Y/N yelped, ducking and weaving to avoid the barrage of apples and peaches. Faster. Jean called, chucking a pear that narrowly missed her head. You'll thank me when you're not knocked out by a surprise attack. This is ridiculous. Y/N shouted, catching an orange midair and throwing it back at him. Jean caught it effortlessly, his grin widening. Nice try, but I'm untouchable. I think she's doing great, Taeyong said from the sidelines, lounging on the grass. She almost got you that time. Almost doesn't count. Jean retorted, tossing a final fruit before declaring, lesson over. You're improving. Y/N slumped onto the ground, exhausted. Next time, remind me to wear a helmet. Yoongi stepped forward next, his movements slow and deliberate. My turn, he said, his voice calm. Let me guess, Y/N said, sitting up. More fruit throwing? Yoongi smirked faintly. No, this is about stealth. If you can sneak past me without getting caught, you win. That sounds easy enough, Y/N said. It's not, Jungkook muttered. Yoongi gave a small, knowing smile and turned his back to her. Try it, he said. Y/N tiptoed forward, careful not to make a sound. But as soon as she got within a few feet of him, Yoongi spun around and tapped her shoulder. Too loud, he said simply. Okay, fine, let me try again, Y/N said, determined now. She tried moving slower, keeping to the shadows, but Yoongi still caught her every time. By the fifth attempt, Y/N groaned in frustration. How are you doing this? Are you psychic? No, Yoongi replied, his smirk widening. I'm just better than you. Wow, encouraging, Y/N muttered. Namjoon chuckled from the sidelines. Don't take it personally. Yoongi's had centuries to perfect this skill. Centuries? Y/N grumbled. I've had 2 minutes. Excuses, Yoongi teased, crossing his arms. Despite her failure, Yoongi gave her a small nod of approval. You're not bad for a beginner. Keep practicing, and you might surprise me someday. Alright, my turn, Namjoon said, stepping forward and adjusting his glasses. Y/N sighed. Please tell me this doesn't involve throwing things at me. No, this is about strategy, Namjoon said, gesturing toward a chessboard he'd set up under a nearby tree. Chess? Y/N asked, tilting her head. How does this help me fight vampires? It's not about fighting, Namjoon explained. It's about thinking ahead. Every move you make has consequences. If you can learn to predict your opponent, you'll always have the upper hand. I think you just wanted an excuse to play chess, Y/N teased, sitting across from him. Maybe, Namjoon admitted with a grin. As they played, Namjoon explained various tactics and how they could apply to real-life situations. Despite his calm demeanor, Y/N could tell he was enjoying himself. You're not bad, Namjoon said after she managed to capture one of his knights. High praise coming from you, Y/N said, smirking. Don't let it go to your head, Namjoon replied, immediately countering her move and putting her king in checkmate. Of course, Y/N muttered, rolling her eyes. During a water break, the teasing began again. You know, Jean said, leaning against a tree, if Y/N keeps improving, she might actually become useful. I'm right here, Y/N said, glaring at him. Don't listen to him, Jungkook said, patting her shoulder. He's just jealous, because you have potential. And what's that supposed to mean? Jean shot back. It means she won't end up throwing fruit at enemies, Jungkook said with a smirk. Careful, Jungkook, Jean said, holding up an apple threateningly. Meanwhile, Taeyong leaned over to Y/N, his voice low enough for only her to hear. You're handling all this teasing pretty well. I don't really have a choice, Y/N whispered back. Taeyong chuckled. Don't worry, treasure. We're just testing you. Testing my patience, maybe, Y/N muttered, earning another laugh from him. The afternoon sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the training yard. Y/N had just finished another grueling session with Namjoon, her brain still buzzing from the strategic exercises he'd put her through. She leaned against the stone railing, catching her breath, when Jimin approached with his signature warm smile. "You look like you could use a break," Jimin said, his voice soft and melodic. "Don't I always?" Y/N replied, wiping the sweat from her brow. "How about we sneak away for a bit," he suggested, tilting his head toward the woods. Y/N raised an eyebrow. "Sneak away? Won't Namjoon lecture us about discipline or something?" "Namjoon's busy," Jimin said with a playful grin. "Come on. You've been working hard. You deserve a little fun." Before Y/N could respond, Jimin grabbed her hand and tugged her gently toward the forest. The forest was a peaceful contrast to the intensity of the training yard. The cool breeze rustled through the leaves, and birds chirped faintly in the distance. Jimin led her to a clearing where a small stream trickled over smooth stones. "See? Isn't this better?" Jimin asked, turning to her with a satisfied smile. "It's nice," Y/N admitted, brushing a stray leaf from her sleeve. "Nice? Just nice?" Jimin said, placing a hand dramatically over his chest. "Do you have any idea how hard I worked to find this spot?" Y/N laughed. "Oh, I'm sure it was exhausting." "You're lucky I'm generous," Jimin said, stepping closer to her. His tone shifted, taking on a more flirtatious edge. "Otherwise, I might have kept this little paradise all to myself." Y/N blinked, taken aback by the sudden change in his demeanor. Thanks for sharing, I guess?" Jimin leaned in slightly, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "You're cute when you're flustered, you know that?" Her cheeks flushed instantly. "I'm not flustered." "Oh, really?" Jimin said, his smile widening. "Your face says otherwise." Y/N stammered, unsure how to respond. Before she could find the words, a familiar voice interrupted. Well, what do we have here?" Jungkook's voice rang out as he stepped into the clearing, a mischievous grin plastered across his face. Y/N turned to see him leaning casually against a tree, arms crossed. "Jungkook? What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," he said, walking closer. His eyes darted between her and Jimin. "Sneaking off without telling anyone? Suspicious." "We were just," Y/N began, but Jungkook cut her off. "Having a private moment, huh?" he teased, raising an eyebrow at Jimin. "Didn't think you'd move this fast, Hyung." "Don't be ridiculous," Jimin said, though his grin betrayed him. "I was just showing her a nice spot to relax." "Relax, huh?" Jungkook said, his tone dripping with mock suspicion. He turned to Y/N, his expression softening. "You okay? He didn't make you uncomfortable, did he?" "What? No." Y/N said quickly. "Good," Jungkook said, his grin returning. "Because now it's my turn to steal you away." Jimin groaned. "Seriously? Can't you let me have one moment?" "Nope," Jungkook said cheerfully, grabbing Y/N's hand and pulling her a step closer. "Besides, she looks like she'd have more fun with me." Y/N stared at him, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "What is happening right now?" "Simple," Jungkook said, leaning in slightly. "I'm saving you from his lame flirting." "Lame?" Jimin said, offended. Y/N couldn't help but laugh at their bickering. "You're both ridiculous." As Jungkook kept teasing her, Y/N decided to turn the tables. She crossed her arms and gave him a sly smile. "Oh, so you think you're better at flirting?" Jungkook blinked, caught off guard by her sudden confidence. Yeah?" "Prove it," she said, stepping closer and tilting her head challengingly. Jimin burst out laughing. "Looks like she's not as shy as you thought." Jungkook scratched the back of his head, suddenly looking like a nervous puppy. "Well, I didn't expect you to." "What's wrong?" Y/N asked, her smile growing. lost your nerve? I didn't lose anything. Jungkook stammered, his cheeks turning pink. Jimin doubled over with laughter. Oh, this is priceless. The mighty Jungkook, undone by a single human. Shut up, Jungkook muttered, pouting slightly. Y/N couldn't resist poking him lightly in the chest. I think you're cute when you're flustered. That's my line. Jungkook exclaimed, his voice rising an octave. Eventually, the three of them made their way back to the manor, still teasing each other. Jungkook kept shooting Y/N playful glares, while Jimin couldn't stop laughing at his younger brother's embarrassment. As they approached the house, Y/N sighed. You guys are exhausting. Admit it, Jimin said, throwing an arm around her shoulder. You had fun. Maybe a little, she said, smiling, despite herself. Don't worry, Jungkook added, leaning in with a cheeky grin. I'll get you back for that one day. I'm shaking, Y/N said dryly, though the warmth in her voice betrayed her amusement.